Did the New Orleans Saints do enough to help build around Tyler Shough this offseason? I went ahead and tried to patch together a depth chart, best guess, best as I could, and think the result of that is the skill positions, especially the wide receiver room. The answer is yes. Maybe still a little shaky on the offensive line. So we'll go ahead, break it down, give you my honest opinion on why I think the wide receiver room actually got an extreme makeover in an A+ edition. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. With the depth chart, we're going to start with the offensive line, and quite honestly, they're going to get their own video, so we're just going to skim right over what's going on here. Because the biggest thing is bringing Edwards in as a free agent, solidified left guard. But as far as the other four, they're returning from last year. Banks and Fuaga started off great, got to keep getting better. They can't regress or even plateau out. McCoy, got to stay healthy, but when he's healthy, this offensive line is insanely better than when he's not for the most part. Ruiz, please learn to run block. But the pass blocking ought to be pretty good. Primary backups, Richard Radens, both of them handled it last year. Both of them played on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Shouldn't be an issue there. There's a lot of question marks, hence why this needs their own video. When you start looking at some of the other position groups, quarterback, you were good going in to the offseason, and then you added Wilson. I don't know if their intention is to keep three or go back to two, but you got a strong enough room there, and it's just being anchored by Shough because this whole thing that we're trying to build an offense is trying to build it around him. An improved room tight end. We basically only had Juwan Johnson. We brought in as a free agent Fant, who we tried to get last offseason, couldn't get him, and then drafted Delp. Now you've got a really strong room right there, and you have 2, 3, 4 young tight ends that could all be highly competitive for that fourth spot. And then at running back, you sign ATN. Big get for the Saints there, in my opinion. Kamara and Miller, I just don't know what's going on with either or both of them. If they're on the roster, that's probably going to be the two primary guys behind ATN. If they're not on the roster, then it's going to fall to Neal and Estime or some combination of those four. And this is, are we going to keep four on the roster, have three active game day, that sort of conversation coming in. But it is a well-rounded room, and you have some talent there. Should be okay once they figure out exactly who's staying, who's going, and then from that point, what's the rotation or the depth chart going to look like. Now we get to the wide receiver room. And this is, in my opinion, why it is easily the most improved and the most important one to improve this offseason. You're going to start out with Olave and Valet. After that, and we're going to get to the list of choices that they had after those two, but you're on some shaky ground there. Tyson, I think, was their guy all along. They drafted him. Now you have three receivers with three pretty distinctive skill sets, but all three can play on all three levels of the field, can play over the middle or outside. They can line up as outside receivers, X and Z, or in the slot. So you're very diverse, very multiple, and you, especially adding Tyson's explosive playability with his size, you're giving Tyler Shough a lot of weapons to work with here out of your primarily your top three receivers. Now they used a second, fourth round pick on Bryce Lance, a wide receiver. A lot of people liked a whole lot, me included, where they took him, what kind of player he's shown himself to be, even though it was at a smaller school at North Dakota State. Man, there's a lot to like there, and I'm thinking that next spot, that fourth receiver spot, is his to lose. So you're kind of starting off at this point. You've added two rookies, bring a lot of explosive ability. Lance with his straight lines, insane 4.3 speed. Tyson, explosive ability. Tyson can play in the slot or play outside. They can both do some stuff in the open field. Can't pin down how many snaps Lance had in the slot exactly at North Dakota State. But I'm just looking at his film going, yeah, it makes you think moving him the slot may not be that big of a transition for him that he can't handle, but we do know he can handle both outside spots. Now we're breaking it into the reserves, all the guys that we would have been picking from had we not drafted these two rookies. Got to call an audible right now. before we get to the reserves, which I'm calling the group of eight, there are um, over 250 combined FBS and FCS colleges that through the draft process, sometimes players, especially on the FCS level, you don't get their full complete college bio, stats, and everything. Sometimes till after the draft. Bryce Lance was one of those. So I had everything for his senior year and some of his junior year stuff, but not the complete picture. I've got it now. So the audible is let's go ahead and take a little deeper conversation in the Bryce Lance right now. Then we'll move on to the group of eight. So as you can see, the information updated again yesterday when I recorded most of this video. So we're going to make the appropriate changes to the Bryce Lance portion right now. And really, this is the thing that I think is, and this is one of the things I just recently found out. 679 wide receivers had enough snaps in 2025 to qualify for their grades, their premium stats, everything else. And what's noticeable is he did not have a lot of pass snaps, targets, or route runs compared, in effect, the rest of college football. Um, because he is in the back half of these numbers for all the receivers in 2025. Remember, this is combined FCS and FBS. But all of a sudden, his number of receptions at 51 gets him in the top half. And then 1,079 receiving yards, 15th overall. Receiving touchdowns, 8, 42nd overall. Drops with his 3, moves him back a little bit towards the kind of the middle. And don't really want to see that. But as long as it doesn't get worse and it gets better, we'll be okay. 10th overall in yards per reception at 21.2. Yards after the catch, 6.7. Still not bad. Still well in the top half of all the receivers that qualify. Passer rating when target. We're going to talk about this when we get to his receiving depth chart. 148.4. Outstanding. An average depth of target, 64th, 15 and a half yards. Again, outstanding numbers. And real quick, 4 carries, 92 yards a touchdown, averaging 23 yards a carry, and forced 2 missed tackles. Did run the ball slightly. But when you start really looking at his premium stats, and this is what I wanted to see the total of everything, all 4 years, and kind of how it played out. First 2 years, 23, 22, not a lot going on there. And he may have been redshirted in 2022. Those numbers kind of indicate he probably was. But really broke out in 24. And honestly, 25, much bigger year. But honestly, this is something that sometimes gets noted because NFL, it seems like, wants breakout years to be as early as possible in your college career. And not necessarily that this is a red flag. It is one thing that a lot of teams do use in their ranking. But he didn't play much those first 2 years. And I think that also was like, well, why wasn't this guy on the field? Because when he finally got on the field, 24, 25. So questions like that have to be answered. Just pointing it out that some teams value that over others. But when he was finally on the field, over those 2 years, catch percentage, very good. Yards, very good. Yards per reception, very good. 21 total touchdowns over that span. You start looking a little down, where were they lining him up? And that was a big one for me that I couldn't quite nail down everything on. I knew he had significant snaps in the slot in 25, but it started in 24. Before that, not much. Overall, roughly about a tenth of his snaps, give or take. Percentage was higher when in the early years, but still, I think getting some significant numbers down here in 25 and 24. Wide, he's always been the majority of his snaps coming wide, over half. The other one that I really wanted to see what it panned out for over real quick. Actually, two things. 81 and 74 is definitely a deep threat on long for his careers. But the drop rate, 4 and 2 years, which basically puts him at a 3.4. So overall, not bad, but yes, 3 is kind of concerning. But the last thing that I really wanted to know was this number here, What was his contested catch? Basically, over those 2 years, combined 58.1. But I think he made a significant jump from 24 to 25. And there's a reason why I think that's very huge and plays into it. And when we get to his receiving depth chart, these are the ones that I'm really 10 plus and 20 plus. So basically, intermediate 10 to 19, then 20 plus. That's the over the top deep stuff, right? And he's pretty good in 2025 in all those areas. Outside, inside the numbers, it doesn't really matter. His rating for his quarterbacks when he's targeted in there is some outstanding numbers. More to the point that even though when you get to short and behind the line, that's what these two rows indicate, you get some significant dip. Not necessarily a big part of his game, but I do like the fact that where he did throw some production, at least in those areas, most of it came over the middle of the field. And anytime you can get college receivers to operate over the middle of the field, obviously a much better chance to get them to do it at the NFL level where they have to do it. And I think, like I said, the group of eight that we'll talk about in a second, there may be some players in there. One kind of thing comes to mind for me that could show up with 4.3 speed, some pretty good height and size, be able to operate on the outside, the inside, but more importantly, just keep putting that pressure on defenses. Because defenses, talked about it ad nauseum, especially once we hired Brandon Staley. Defenses are designing more and more to stop what he brings to the table. Bigger, faster guys with some contested catch ability that can really stretch defenses and do it sideline to sideline and do it from the line of scrimmage to the back line of the end zone. Bryce Lance is one of those guys. Tyson could be, but Lance definitely. But of those four, you've now covered a lot of areas. You've really improved that wide receiver room, and I'll say it out loud. You improved it now, in my opinion, than it was at the beginning of last season, where it wasn't necessarily bad. Just too many guys doing the exact same thing on the field, making it easier for defenses to defend them. Going, there's just certain areas we don't care if these guys go because they're not big playmakers there. We just need to know which ones are going to the areas where collectively as a group they are most dangerous. And that's what it comes down to. Diversifying this room for Tyler Shough. Now everybody's becoming dangerous, and these guys are moving all over the field, being able to show it. But while they're doing it, I'm talking specifically about your top three guys. But you get to multi receiver sets, 11 and beyond formations with 3, 4, 5 receivers. What he showed he can do in college on limited snaps and limited targets, that's a real problem for NFL defenses. And if he shows he can do it at the NFL level, they are forced to use resources to defend that. And that's where things get really, really interesting. So moving on to the group of eight, and I don't mean that in any disrespectful way. There's some good football players here. It's just, it's easier referring to them as a group and trying to remember there's eight of them that are basically fighting for one, maybe two jobs, depending on is there going to be five or six in the receiver room. No particular order, just divided them up four and four to make it a little easier to talk about them. And actually, I did this from memory and had to look up the eighth one. Actually, so Tipton, we're going to start off with him. Um, Going into his third year, he's been a just a hot commodity both off seasons, moving through OTAs in the training camp, preseason, especially last year when he and Tyler Shough blew the top off of the defensive Chargers, I believe it was, preseason game for a long touchdown. But over those 2 years, he's played in 25 games, 25 total receptions, 175 yards. He's averaging seven a catch, no touchdowns. And so giving ample opportunities to be involved in the offense. And I get kind of given the pass in 2024 because it was kind of a shit show, but he had some opportunities last year, especially when the offense was starting to come around towards the end of the year, week 9 and beyond. Not, not, not really there, in my opinion. You kind of move on to Kevin Austin Jr., and he's a guy that's kind of the opposite. So when you look at his numbers, and I've said this before, it was like this guy was an afterthought on our practice squad until in 24 and 25 both. It's like, man, we need some guys to receiver room's getting decimated. We need some guys to go out there and make some plays. He's played in 16 total games over that 2 year span, 8 and 8 both seasons, 24 receptions, 291 yards for 12.2, long of 36, and added a touchdown into the mix last season. I mean, almost instinctively, I know what Tipton's supposed to be versus Austin, but come on. Jalen Polk, we traded for him last year, and it's basically he had the 1 year in 24 with New England. He's a second round pick. Um, his rookie year, 12 reception, 87 yards, 2 touchdowns, along of 21. Um, had a shoulder injury early in 2025 training camp, I believe it was, or preseason. Ended up missing the whole season. That's when we traded for him. So they saw something in him, and this is going back to the coaching staff in the front office, even though they were in separate places at the time in Philly and New Orleans. But seeing something in him and that they were interested in going, yeah, we'll spin a pick over to New England, bring him in, see what he has. And he's in the mix some kind of way. We just don't know how or why yet. Moving on to our third rookie receiver, we grabbed Barry Brown. I think he's coming in primarily as a kick returner and a punt returner. He was a great kickoff returner 4 years in college. Pretty good punt returner, too. Played a lot of offense, though, as receiver and outside and inside both. I think he brings a possibility of improvement. I don't think I mean, he was a good college receiver. I don't think anybody's expecting much out of him as an NFL receiver. But I think his path to making this team and making an impact is doing enough. So again, 6 receivers. The sixth one is the return man. But hey, man, we may need you at some point to step out on the field and basically do what Dante Pettis did for us last year. Roll out on the field and hey, go make a couple catches, make a couple big plays for us. So that's definitely not a given that everybody's saying, well, he's going to be the return man. I think he's going to have to show he can do at least something on the offensive side because you get the impression, unless they've changed after last year's debacle on special teams, they want special teams players that also contribute some kind of way in a position on offense or defense. So moving on to the next four when we're talking about this, and we're going to start with Trey Palmer. Interesting case there. South Louisiana fans probably familiar with him if they follow LSU at all. He was there for a while, transferred out to Nebraska for his final year, had a big year, got drafted by Tampa Bay, played in Tampa Bay 23-24. We got him last year, and he was injured, so he didn't play at all. But in Tampa Bay, basically over those 2 years he was there, 11 games played, 51 receptions, 557 yards, 12.1 average. 54 was his long, but 4 touchdowns. 6'1", 190, getting comparable size to Trey Lance when we were having the Trey Lance conversation. He was one that popped to mind because he is fast and a big play guy, and he has at least some limited um, stats with Tampa Bay showing that. So he's one I'm definitely keeping my eye on. He could stake a claim if he comes back healthy and can show some of that over the top stuff that he was doing for Tampa Bay. But Mean's kind of the same category, to be honest with you. 6'2", 215. He's very comparable to Trey Lance. He showed up with 4.3 speed here as a rookie, which was 2024. Played in 7 games before a season-ending ankle injury at Charger Stadium, and more on that in a second. But 9 receptions, 118 yards, 13.1 yards a catch, long of 36, and a touchdown. Last year in the preseason game at Charger Stadium, he re-injured the ankle again, gone for the season, doesn't even get a chance to get on the field. And I have no idea what his status is as far as injury, what's going on with that. I think that question is going to start getting asked and answered at least when OTAs will be coming up in a few weeks. So keep an eye on him back 100% healthy. And if we can keep him healthy, he would be the other one I'm thinking could give Trey Lance a real run for his money at the spot that I'm kind of giving to Trey Lance right now by virtue of the fourth round pick this year. Ronnie Bell, been around the league for a while, drafted by Frisco in 2023. I believe he's a seventh round pick. Played in Frisco 23, 24, and 25. Knocked around a couple of practice squad before he wound up on ours. And last game of the season, we needed wide receivers badly, get him out there, and he catches, which I'm pretty sure was Tyler Shuck's last touchdown pass last season. But the insane, I'm being heavily interfered with by the defender, one-handed catch in the back of the end zone. But in his just overall career, and with New Orleans in that one game, it was 2 catches, 23 yards, and a touchdown. But to roll that up with what he did in Frisco, 10 receptions, 113 yards total, long of 20, 4 touchdowns. He's an interesting guy because he also was a punt returner for Frisco, and he averaged 7 yards a return while he was there. And he also drew a lot of his snaps came from the slot. Might have a punt returner, and he could make it as a punt returner. And hey, look, he's been in the league a little bit. I'm just getting a Dante Pettis vibe right here. We can use him somewhat in the slot, be able to get some production out of him if we need to. So talking about fifth or sixth receiver, I think you got to enter Bell in the conversation too. And lastly, Damon Alford, my apologies. You're the one I forgot that I had to go look up and go, man, who the heck was the eighth one again? And he is interesting. He's going to be a true rookie this year. 6'6", 224 pounds. Drafted in the CFL first round out of Utah. He's also competed in rookie minicamp for the Kansas City Chiefs. Played 15 games then in the CFL. 20 receptions, 407 yards, 20.4 average, and 5 touchdowns. In 5 collegiate seasons, Syracuse and Utah combined. It's 3 years at Syracuse, his final one in Utah. It's 29 starts in 46 games, 67 receptions, 1,291, call it 1,300 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Numbers not all that undifferent than Lance put up kind of in 2 years in North Dakota State, 24-25. So this is another one going, eh, maybe. Maybe he becomes a guy, and he's bigger, a lot bigger. I could not find his 40 for some reason. It's hard to go back a couple of years even sometimes to find these guys' 40s. But with that size, and I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, it's 6'6", 224 with catching ability and some downfield ability. I'm not breaking news here, but in the back of my head, I'm thinking maybe practice squad working a little bit and going big tight end move type guy in the future if we work with him. Just throwing it out there. But interesting guy, big guy that apparently can go downfield and catch the ball at about a 20-yard an average clip, which is pretty dang good. So overall, this room got an extreme makeover this offseason, and all of it should help Tyler Shough. And this is one of the big things. Give him weapons, he's got weapons. What I really like is the fact that we've hedged our bets with finding players, young players especially, to try to get in there and basically help out Olave and Valet. Because we knew these were our two solid pieces in the wide receiver room. It was all about the group of reserves coming up, and there's 8 of them left off that list. Hey, can you fight your way in here? You drafted Tyson, and then you doubled down and drafted Lance, and even added Brown late on day 3, which, you know, return is probably the option with him, but he could get in the mix. You're going very deep to what I just love of what they're trying to do here is diversify a room where we're going to load it up with weapons. Everybody kind of can do one or two things really, really well, and we're finding, okay, who else can do the rest of the stuff well? We want to make you as interchangeable as possible, whether it's where we're going to line you up in the formation, whether we can use you in motion in the formation, which Kellen Moore was number 1 in the NFL in doing that last season. But more importantly, can we get out of dead last in the NFL in 2025 in explosive plays and start pushing some more and more of these 20-plus yard throws downfield? against defenses that are designed for the most part to stop 20-yard plus throws down the field. Feel really good about this room. I feel really good about most other rooms in this on the offensive side that we've added to, and I think we've done in some, like earlier, the quick run through the depth chart. We've done some improvement at each one of them. Even my biggest question mark, which is in fact the offensive line, and will get its own video. Maybe Friday if I'm lucky, but it could be next week. Till I see you next time, I'm Tim. Peace out and who dat.